Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Hi there.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm actually pretty good, getting back into like the swing of life after, a rough few weeks of family stuff. So it feels good though to be back at my desk and like, I don't know, just refocusing and kind of feeling a little bit of like normalcy.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And
that's
you?
Good. I keep forgetting that Luna's gone.
So you lay down in bed?
No, actually, when I'm like walking around the house during the day, because she's so small and her fur was like tan. So she's easy to miss. And so it's easy to step on her. And she also liked to like crowd herself into like random spaces. So she would like sometimes crawl halfway under the coffee table and fall asleep there or under the couch. And so I'll randomly throughout the day just be like, oh, where's Luna? And then just be like, oh yeah, she's gone.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, for anyone who listened to last week's episode about grief, we're not going to talk about that again this week.
No, we're not. We're moving on.
I thought maybe we could do a swing to the opposite direction and talk about things that are a little more like frivolous and fun and meaningless. And like, what are not meaningless, but like, what are the things that are helping you get through? What has kind of captured your attention lately? What are you interested in? And I'll go first since only barely talked about like this idea. So you may not have much on your mind, because I was sharing that the thing that that's really been playing for me, I keep it on not even the background, because it's actually a little too entertaining. I keep focusing on it, but I'm not a YouTuber person, FYI, even though we are on YouTube, but I don't follow
I don't think they call them YouTubers anymore.
Well, whatever. What do they call them then?
I have no idea.
Content creators? Well, I don't follow YouTube folks. I think they do. My son says he's a YouTuber. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know.
I'm wrong.
But I don't follow any of the big, like, Mr. Beast or whoever the people are. I don't even know them, right? I only know Mr. Beast because now he's ubiquitous, which is gross. Everything. Beast games, Beast food. I don't know what his food is. Chocolate bars. He's everywhere you look. The man is ridiculously wealthy. Whatever. But I have been captivated. Someone in a community I'm in mentioned this 50 States in 50 Days series on YouTube. Didn't know what it was, looked it up, easily found it because apparently it's a pretty popular YouTuber who's doing it. His name's Ryan Trahan. And I didn't know who he was, but I started watching him. My son was like, are you watching Ryan Trahan? My 9-year-old son. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh,
guys have something in common.
I know. He's like, he's a huge YouTuber. Why are you watching him? And I'm like, I don't know. Somebody told me about this series he's doing. So he and his wife, he's 26. They're very young. He and his wife are traveling through all 50 states in 50 days. They're driving through them all and raising money for St. Jude's, which hard to fault them because they have already raised like over $5 million, and they still have, at the time this airs, I think they're in their final week of the trip, but they still have like a week to go, and they've raised over, I think, $5.5 million for St. Jude's research, which is amazing because it's an amazing organization that doesn't turn children away when they are in the most need, because they're cancer research and a cancer hospital for kids battling cancer. So like an amazing organization, and they're driving through all these states, and it's just, they're trying to find the best Airbnb or the best like place to stay in each of the states, and then ranking them and showing you what they do while they're in the town and what there is to do with the thing. And it's like, each video is maybe 20-25 minutes or something. I'm watching them on almost double speed because that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
But they're sweet. It's sweet. There's no cursing, just for parents, like my son could watch these and I wouldn't be remotely upset about that. They're interesting because you're getting to see different parts of the country. It's happening almost in real time. I think they're showing them maybe 4 or 5 days because, there's a lot of editing involved that they have people do for them, but about 4 or 5 days behind real time. But they're like out there really doing this right now, getting to watch and sort of root for your state, see what they do in your state. They ate toasted ravioli in Missouri, which from here, that's a thing we do. So it was very interesting to see their reaction
The
to this.
fried ravioli, right?
Yeah, this food that they had never tried before, and watching that. Just, you know, and then looking at all these Airbnbs and being like, oh, I want to stay there. And by the way, the one that's in the lead at the moment, their favorite one's called Treetopia in Oklahoma. It's a tree house that has like a giant slide and outdoor thing.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I totally want to go there. We could drive to Oklahoma. Well, first of all, this has been gangbusters for these Airbnbs. It has to be, because when I went to look at that one, there were no available dates until next year. None,
Wow.
not even the winter in Oklahoma. So clearly it's working for the Airbnbs. They should be thrilled because they're getting booked out. But also that Airbnb is like $900 a night.
I believe it.
Lovely. I'm sure they're getting them probably for free, and they don't mention a lot of that. They're getting big donations from companies that are like Dollar Shave Club and Kia and like just big organizations. Mr. Beast was the first big donor. But all of the like stuff aside, it's just really nice. It's a nice way to pass the time. And there's this part of me that's like, what if he's deeply problematic? Because a lot of the people donating are mentioning Bible verses and stuff. They mentioned one time that they have been reading their Bibles in the car. Okay. But also, like, why do I care if what they're creating right now is something that's nice and enjoyable? It makes me feel happy while I'm watching it. I've discovered that one of my most toxic traits is that I want to hate things that everyone else likes. And this has really proven that to me.
I'm the same way.
Why do we do that? Because I felt my resistance to this, because each of these videos is getting like 5 million views, 4 or 5 million views. So then of course I'm like, hey, they're making all this money off that. I bet they're getting all their places for free, blah, blah, like all this stuff in my head as like a content creator, blah, blah. But like a person who understands sort of the mechanics of how this whole thing is working behind the scenes, there's that part of me that wants to be like, you know, F them.
Yeah.
This thing's bullshit, whatever.
Yeah.
And I want to be like, oh, and everybody thinks they're so cool. Okay, well, then I think they must suck, right? Like, I got to find all the reasons why they're probably problematic so that I can be like, oh, yeah, well, look. And I even searched like Ryan Trahan controversies, and the biggest ones were that I could find were pretty much nothing. Like, he seems to be rather okay. And I was just like, what is this about me that I want to find all the reasons to hate him and to hate the series when in fact, it's really enjoyable. And why can't I just be like, just because everyone loves it, just because it's popular, just because, you know, he's just a white dude, why can't I just say, yeah, it's great?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. I think, well, I know for me, what it comes down to is like that, like, desire to just be like against the flow, to just kind of like be different and like stand out.
What's your Enneagram type?
I don't remember.
I wonder if you're a 4.
I know I'm not a 4. I'm either a 7 or an 8. I know for sure.
Because 4s are the ones that need to be unique. They need to feel like they're special and different. I'm not one of those either, but I can sometimes feel those little hints of that in me where I want to be like, oh, you all think it's cool? Well, I'm different. But I'm not a rebel per se. So I was just wondering if you're more of a rebel type.
Yeah. I think for me, the desire to like want to stand out and be unique is not necessarily about me, but just about not being like everyone else. Like there's like this block in my head that's like, if too many people are into it, you can't trust it. Like then all these people are just not really thinking about what they're engaging in. Like it's too popular. Like it's too, you know what I mean? And so there's skepticism in me to be like, I don't think so. And I remember when I was in my early 20s, and this was when I was entrenched in my evangelical Christian bubble. And I remember one day after church, this was when American Idol had just come out. It had only been out for a few years. So I'm dating myself right now. But I was talking to one of my friends about American Idol. He was like, oh, did you watch American Idol last night? It was so good, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, oh, no, I don't watch American Idol. All stuck up and shit. He was like, why not? Don't you like music? And I love music. I sometimes wake up with songs stuck in my head. Like I constantly have a soundtrack playing in the back of my mind, even though I'm not musically inclined whatsoever. He's like, don't you love music? And I was like, yeah, I do. But you know, I'm just not that into it. And he was like, well, he wouldn't let it go. Like he kept probing. And I was like, well, everyone else likes it. Like, I don't want to just like what everyone else likes just to like it. And we got into this like 30-minute discussion about how like that's a habit for me of like not liking things just because other people like them. Like that was my only reason to not like something. And then I remember so distinctly he asked me the question. He was like, "Well, if that's all you do, then how do you know what you really like or what you really don't like?" And I couldn't answer the question. Like I felt gutted in that moment. And then he just fucking walked away. And I felt like I was like on the operating table, like with my guts just like hanging out after this like deep 30-minute discussion and him asking me that question and just leaving me there. And I was just like, I don't know who I am. Like I had just had this sudden realization that I had no idea really who I was because most of my life I had decided to just spitefully not like things for the sole reason that other people like them. So I had no idea what my real interests were.
Well, because if you refuse to like something because everyone else likes it, and then you almost go the opposite way, then do you actually like that opposite thing, or is it only because you don't like the other thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
Totally. And then it
It's an
also
existential question.
right. And it also makes me think about, I remember all the like alt kids in school, the like
Yes.
the outsiders or whatever, they all ended up looking exactly alike too. So they would be rebelling against the popular kids in the way that they were all sort of homogenous and I
Yeah.
don't want to be a part of that. But then they ended up falling into another thing of people who are all exactly alike because ultimately, aren't we all tribal? We are by
We're trying to belong somewhere.
design. Yeah, humans are these sort of tribal beings where we need community. We need people to reinforce for us that we're okay by saying, yeah, I feel that way too. I like that thing too. So even if it's not the popular thing, then all we do is we end up finding another community of people who all bond over rejecting the thing that everyone else likes. And so
Yeah.
how is that
Yeah.
really any different, right? And it's something maybe this is a universal experience. So other people listening may feel it too, because I find myself all the time. I shared this on social media too, just saying like, it is a toxic trait that I've recognized at 50 that
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, I have had this habit a lot where once I realize something has like universal appeal, then I start to pull away from it. I did the same thing with American Idol, going back to that. Like I loved that first season. And then I started to realize, oh, this is something that like everyone's
This is
into
too
now.
status quo.
Exactly. And listen, Taylor Swift is an example for me where I've never really listened to her music. I just say I'm not into Taylor Swift. Part of that is because again, I'm seeking out the faults, and they're legitimate. The idea of the fact that she's a billionaire, the fact that she often shows up in this sort of peak white feminist way, like those are all valid complaints. But if I look at her art, do I actually know if I like it or not? No, because I've really never listened to much of her music.
Yeah.
And a couple of songs I've heard, they're not bad. They're little bops, like,
Yeah.
okay. But I just sort of reject it on the whole because I think everyone likes it and I don't want to be part of something that everyone likes. So this is an interesting challenge for me where I'm like, this is something that I've heard a lot of people talking about. Clearly it has mass appeal. These people aren't trying to be, from what I can tell, unique in any way. They're very like white bread, just like really boring kind of people. But also, can I just say I can enjoy it for what it is? And the fact is, it's fun to watch. It's nice. It's getting me through a summer where there's been a lot going on. And I'm just like, I just kind of want some nice, wholesome programming that feels nice to listen to, that doesn't stress me out. They're not going to get into politics. And listen, everything is political and I could dissect this in all the ways that it's
Yeah.
political and I can
For
feel my
sure.
brain doing that. And then I'm like, okay, but can I also just allow myself that gift of saying I don't have to always do that. And I can just be with this thing and enjoy it for what it is, which is challenging. I think sometimes when you go far down this journey
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
understanding all of these layers, the onion that everything is
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss. Like that's a saying. Excuse me. That's a saying
for a
for a
reason.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can feel myself wanting to pull it apart and pick it apart and find all the faults. But then when we start doing that, then we're left with nothing because the truth is we're all flawed as humans and everything. We've talked about like problematic artists and things like
Yeah.
that. And if we dissect any artist or any creator, anything, any business, any person, you're going to find that they're not perfect because
Oh, for
no one
sure.
is. Yeah. And so it's like,
For
can I allow
sure.
myself this joy of just saying, I'm just going to enjoy this for what it is. Let it serve that purpose in my life and not have to go any farther into like finding all the faults.
Yeah. 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 It's like once you start learning, like when you go to college or in any class, actually, in any English or composition class, once you start really like learning sentence structure and like how to write a proper essay and all of that, and then you start reading books and you start noticing all the grammar and syntax and structural mistakes, and you're just like, fuck, I can't even enjoy this now.
Well, and isn't that interesting though, too? God, now this is here I go getting into dissecting things in like this intersectional way where I'm like, let's just have fun. But it's so interesting because certainly within even grammar, there is so much policing of what
For
language
sure.
is correct and not correct and appropriate and not appropriate. And as we know, because we live in such a white supremacist culture, the language that is used by white folks is what's
Mm-hmm.
considered to be appropriate and correct. And I have found that for myself where like AAVE, when I hear that, to my
Mm-hmm.
immediate reaction is, that is inferior, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
not correct. And I have to check myself still on that all the time. In the same
Yeah.
way that when this idea of they as a singular
Yeah.
was really, really hard for my brain. And now I'm somebody I'm leaning into she, they, because I
Mm-hmm.
do now, I've been able to unpack that enough to be with it to say, I actually ultimately think it's far better
Yeah.
language. But it was so hard in the beginning because my brain goes to this like, no, I have learned this is what's correct and everything else is wrong. And so, and everything, and when we say it's wrong, it's less than. And I
Yeah.
still find
Yeah.
that all the time. And I find I judge people by language so much and I don't want to be that way.
Yeah. 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 I have a bit of superiority complex sometimes as well. And so I'm the same way. And I think one thing that it took me a while to realize is that like using like books and like seeing grammar mistakes as just like an example to illustrate what I'm about to say is like just because I see the mistakes doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. And I think for a long time, like those two things were like synonymous because it's like if you see it, then that means you have to distance yourself from it. And to a certain extent, that can be true, right? Depending on the context, depending on the situation. But I think also we're fucking human beings. We need to be entertained. We need to be able to engage with things creatively and engage with things just for the joy and the pleasure of it. And the world does not offer us enough instances of joy and pleasure for us to be as selective as we would like to be.
Mm.
And so sometimes we listen to that problematic musician, or we watch that problematic show, or we read that problematic author, right? Because we're just trying to get joy and pleasure wherever we can. We're no good to the collective if we are so burdened down by this critical analysis that we cannot engage with the world around us. And so it's a give and take, right? Like you have to decide for yourself where those lines are, and those lines change every day. Those boundaries change every day. They're not static, they're dynamic, depending on your context, depending on your privilege, depending on your capacity, because we got to find a way to get through this. And there's no way to get through it without finding joy and pleasure in things. And sometimes it's not ideal. We're not in the ideal position to make those decisions, but we still have to make those decisions. So what the fuck do you do then?
Well, and I think it's just interesting looking at that for myself and noticing the ways that it is about exceptionalism and setting myself apart and this,
Mm-hmm.
which is all still part of the problem. Like me
Yeah.
trying to separate myself from this thing or anything that's like wildly popular. It's this way of like me trying to say I'm better than,
It's
and
like gifted child syndrome.
for sure. And then that's all the same hierarchical stuff that I want to dismantle. And yet, like in the most sneaky and subtle of ways, I'm still participating in it by that thing of like, oh, everyone else likes this. Well, then I'm better than that. I won't be a part of that. Right. That's still how am I now participating in these same hierarchical systems that we say we want to dismantle? And I think it is a challenge and really important that we find those moments in ourselves and call that out for ourselves. And there's still gonna be times where I'm not gonna be able to make that change. But like in this particular really like small, scenario, I'm trying to push myself through that and lean into it and say, it's okay. It's okay to not only watch it, but it's okay to even tell people I'm watching it. Right. And to own it instead of, because sometimes what I would do is I'd secretly watch, but
Mm-hmm.
then I would either not tell anyone Or I would do it as if it was like opposition research, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm doing it only so that I can then dismantle it and tell you all the ways you're wrong for enjoying this thing, right? And this is icky stuff to admit, but it's true. And I think there's probably so many of us who show up in that same way sometimes and have to catch ourselves.
Yeah. 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 Agreed. Agreed. Something that and we do this every July just to like, it's so fucking hot outside. Nobody wants to be outside. And especially just with the past year that we've had, year and a half, like it's been nice to just kind of settle into our routine of doing Christmas in July. And
Mm.
so the Hallmark Channel, like in July, they replay all of like their older Christmas movies, but then they also have like a few new movies that they put out as like new holiday premieres, and then they like tease what's coming up for the upcoming holiday season. And so whenever July hits. I mean, it's almost always on Hallmark in our house because it's just pleasant, ambient, atmospheric type of noise in the background that isn't triggering, like it's not like watching the news or watching reality TV or like a thriller or horror movie or anything. And so, but we've kind of really been getting into it this month just because it has been rough. It has been rough. And the channel has like put out some new kinds of Christmas in July programming. And so they have this show that comes on every Sunday night, and it's about this cul-de-sac. And it's like 4 or 5 different families that live in this cul-de-sac, and each episode is like focused on a specific family. But
Oh.
at the end of the episode, you don't get the closure. And so it's all like leading to this culmination for the final episode where all the families get like closure to their stories. And it's been really interesting because like, I think it's called Holidays because there's a storyline with like, I think they're like either Chinese American or Vietnamese American family. And so the grandson is like gay, but the grandmother doesn't know. And he's engaged to his boyfriend or fiance. And we missed the first part of it, but they're like faking an engagement with like his sister or something to like get through the wedding planning. And they're trying to like figure out how to break it to the grandmother. And so it like we turned it on last weekend, like 15 minutes into the episode already. And I was like, this is really interesting because it's like, here we have this show. Well, first of all, it's Hallmark. Like seeing gay people on Hallmark is like a new thing.
Well, I was going to say, haven't they been leaning into that more? And in fact, so much so
They
that
have.
Candace Cameron Bure, the horrible human that she is, had to leave the network to start her own thing for all the other
Yeah. The
homophobes in
Great
the world.
American Family channel
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Which
Yeah.
I say good for them because haven't they even shown like same sex kissing and things like that are
They
like,
have. But
oh, good for
literally
them.
like last year, the year before was like when they first
Isn't
started
that
doing
what it kind of, and that's when I think she left because she had
that's
been
when she
doing it.
left. Yeah.
Bye
Yeah.
bye. Bye bye,
Yeah.
Candace.
So it's still really, really new, but here you have this storyline about this couple who's not wholeheartedly in the closet, but having to go back in the closet to tease out the best way to maintain these family dynamics and these relationships. And I thought it was just I thought it was written really well. Like it was a really complex way to show that like not everything is like black and white. And I remember being like a baby queer, like in my early 30s when I first came out and just being like, no, nobody should put you back in the closet, because that's what you think, when you first come to terms with your identity, you're like, most people, who have the privilege that I did, to be able to just be out about it. Um, it's hard for us to understand why someone would stay in the closet or why they would go back in the closet for like family. And you're like, no, fuck family, whatever. If they don't love you, then they don't love you. And it's like, to a certain extent, that's true. But like everyone's situation is different. Right. And so like his grandmother has a heart condition. They have a family business. Also, his fiance was like a therapist. The the main character son who's engaged to the or grandson who's engaged to the therapist was like, I don't want to keep putting you in this position. But the therapist was like, as a therapist, like I can't ask you to disrupt your family dynamics in this way that could potentially cause a lot of harm. And also as your fiance, like I don't want to do something that could potentially make your grandmother sick, right? Because she has this heart condition. And they're literally talking about this in the closet.
Yeah,
And
of course.
Yeah, and then they cut.
Really drive home the point.
Right, right. And then they're like walking out of the closet, and the fiance's like, I'm really beginning to hate this closet. Like, he makes this joke, and I'm just like, this feels really self aware, right?
It's impressive
Yeah,
for
it was
Hallmark.
very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it kind of goes back to that same thing, that just this idea of the when you come out, because similarly, and I'm even more of a baby queer than you, I think, and being out about my bisexuality or pansexuality. And I know that feeling of once you feel that freedom for yourself, I think part of it is you want that same gift for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So there is that. But I also think there is a little bit of that going back to what we were talking about earlier, that hierarchical superiority specialness thing of like, well, if I've done it, then everyone should be able to do it. Right. And look at me. I did it. So you can too, kind of a thing that's again feeding into the same stuff, because we could also just as easily remember until 2 days ago or whenever it was.
I didn't even know what the fuck I was.
Right. That was me too, for whatever reason. And like, why can't I extend that grace to you? So I think there's like this mix of like, part of it is I want you to have the same freedom and gift that I have. And part of it is I'm judging you now because look at me, I'm special. And what's wrong with you? Why aren't you? And it's just so funny the way we do that stuff to each other. And you see it all the time in the communities that we kind of exist inside of now, I think, where I see inside of this like liberation minded community, some of that same stuff show up in really interesting ways where you sort of think, wait a minute though, aren't we still the master's tools? Are we not still using the master's tools here? And don't we know that's not going to dismantle this house for all of us? But it's just so easy to pull those tools because we're so used to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you brought up that quote, because I think a lot of times when people, or at least for me, I won't say people, but I'll say when I first started my journey into like feminist theory and reading feminist works and reading specifically Audre Lorde, and that essay where she talks about the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. I think the way that I interpreted that was like being outside of society, right? Being outside of societal structures. And as I've grown like in my own mindset and in my own journey as like an intersectional feminist and, a socialist, whatever the fuck you want to call me, a liberationist, right? What I've come to understand is like, there's no way for us to completely exist outside of societal structures, right? Like, in order to do that, we would have to
Start your own
completely go off
society
grid.
on an island, right?
Right.
And even there, you're still affected by the influences that you bring into it.
Right. You still be affected by climate change, right? So like there's your societal structure, right? So, and that would be in opposition, right, to the goal of liberation, right? Because then that's a separatist kind of thing, which is in opposition to collectivism. And so, and I think what I've been becoming, or what I've been learning about what Audre Lorde might have meant when she said that is it's not necessarily about removing yourself from society's structures, but it's about resisting the systems that operate within society's structures, right? So like
I thought you were going to say the systems that operate internally.
well, that's where I was going. That's where I was going, right?
Good.
And that's where it starts, right? It's like, okay, internally in my own interiority, in my own mindset, in my own ways of thinking and the way that I interact with the world, what systems am I replicating in the way that I engage with myself and with the people around me? And some of that can be this like superiority complex, right? This desire to be exceptional, right? Having this gifted child syndrome of just being like, well, I'm special, I am different, right? And I think as Americans, we all have that gifted child syndrome.
I mean, American exceptionalism is a thing.
It's a thing. Like American exceptionalism, this American idea of like manifest destiny, like that is embedded into our culture from the very foundation, from the very beginning, when quote unquote our founding fathers landed on this massive land rock, right? Like they were coming over because of that. And that's what drove their ability to reap this genocide on the indigenous population here and just do all this land grabbing. And that's what drove their ability to enslave Africans, right? And to harm that that continent the way that it did. And that's what drives the military industrial complex, right?
And that's what's behind what's happening right now with immigration
Yeah.
and, illegal aliens.
Yeah.
This whole, like, the fact that we can apply that term to a group of humans is
Yeah.
rooted. And they're using that same American exceptionalism ideal, that's white supremacy, which is part of it, to get people to see others as less than. This idea
Yeah.
that if I can be superior to anyone just because they don't, it starts with, if I'm allowed to be superior because you watch something that everyone else likes and I don't, that same attitude I can begin to extend in all sorts of ways that can become very
Right.
harmful. And the right people can manipulate that thing that exists in all of us to make us do that in ways that
Yeah.
are just terrifying and disgusting. And we
Yeah.
see it
Yeah.
happening right now with people you would think would not support this kind of behavior, but they're pulling at something, this thing that exists in all of us.
It's like, well, you're better than that person, so
Yeah.
you deserve this and they don't deserve that. Like we see it when they pit lower class white people against lower class black people or against lower class Latino people. We see it even in a more nuanced way in the immigration conversation when they say, well, this person is a good immigrant.
Right.
They have a
Melania
job,
Trump's
they
an
pay
okay immigrant.
taxes,
Yes.
right? They went to
They
college,
did things
they're a
the
good
right way.
they're contributing, right? Like they're a family person, like they own their own business, like they don't deserve this, right? And it's like, no, nobody deserves it because they're a fucking human being. To put yourself above someone else is to deny someone else their human dignity and their right to thrive. And that's just like the insidious ways that like this idea of American exceptionalism kind of permeates our day to day.
And we like to think, I think, individually that we wouldn't be susceptible to showing up in that way, to starting
Right.
to do those things. Because again, it's like this exceptionalism. Except for me, I would never do that. And I think the actual liberation and healing comes in where you can start to recognize, oh no, it could be me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is me, because I am doing that in my own ways. And that's that dismantling of the tools of like saying, that's the tool. The exceptionalism is the tool. And where do I find it in myself? I
Yeah.
need to dismantle it in myself, because if I don't, then I can't be part of dismantling it outside of me, because I will get pulled in those same ways, right? And so all the places that I can find it in myself, in the smallest, most insidious, silliest little ways, if I can find it, I can say, oh, I am still using that tool. I am still using that master's tool. So no, not me. Yes, it would be me if I'm not careful. It could easily be me if I'm not super careful.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard, because most of us want to, again, sort of exceptionalize ourselves. Yeah, like, no, I would never do that. I'm better than that. And actually, no, none of us is better than that, because we all have it in us. And we have to be really careful to watch inside of ourselves for it, because otherwise other people are going to find it in us and use it against us.
Right, right. And I think, and I want to say just like really clearly, like, it's not wrong to want to be different. I think where the toxicity comes in and the white supremacy comes in is when your different is better than somebody else's
The
different.
better than.
And that's where the trouble happens, right? And
Mhm.
I think if an easy litmus test for anyone listening or watching is you aren't sure if you have that superiority complex, when was the last time you talked to a homeless person or gave them money or food without thinking, oh, they're probably going to use this on drugs? Right?
Or if they didn't say thank you, you thought, how dare
They're
you?
ungrateful. Yeah.
Yeah, I did this for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because those, I feel like homeless or unhoused people in this country, like whatever language you want to use, they're so forgotten. Like it's so easy to just pretend that they're not there.
Yeah. Another class of people I think that you can use this with, and I only know this from a recent experience I just had on Threads, so this is very interesting, and I was going to bring this up, we have just enough time, is the super fat category as well. How often have you had a conversation out and about with someone who is, the term that we often use is morbidly obese? I don't love that term because it's created by the health industrial complex, but someone who is super fat, right? How often do you do that? Or how often do you shy away, walk away? Also, how often do you think to yourself, I'll never be like that, I would never let myself, whatever, those kinds of messages you have? Because I posted on Threads recently and I had no clue it would take off like this, but I posted a picture of the doctor's office while I was in it, and said, did you know that you can refuse to be weighed at the doctor's office? Just to let people know, like, You don't have to be weighed in because I choose not to be anymore. And the barrage of anti-fat, disgusting bigotry that showed up in that post, I was blown away, shocked. I had no idea. Something like 900 comments the last time I looked of just
Oh my God.
one after another. And it was not just white men. I expected that. Okay. Well, I didn't actually expect anything when I posted it. I had no inclination that it would result in anything other than maybe a few people saying like, yeah, I don't either or something. It was nonstop, but it was also so many white women. And it made me realize just the way that this group of people, most especially the super fat, not just like I would consider myself probably small fat by the categories that they now use, but it is disgusting how much bias there is that is accepted.
Yeah.
Right? Like it does feel like
It's the
you're right about
norm.
the unhoused, but in some ways I actually feel like the super fat category, that group of people, that class of people is perhaps the place where bias is the most accepted. Because there is this, I mean, in the same way with unhoused folks, there is this belief that you did it to yourself, that you could make a change. It's a moral failure, right? It's a personal and moral failure. So yeah, I think that same thing, like check in with yourself there. How often are you having conversations with folks who are super
Or
fat?
just looking those people
In
in
the
the
eye.
eye.
Yeah, not avoiding them.
Yeah.
Avoiding their
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, Paulo Freire, this Brazilian educational philosopher, in his short book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he talks about how when we dissect somebody else's humanity, we actually have to dissect our own humanity first in order to do that. And so by thinking of other people as less than and inferior, we are fragmenting our humanity and we're damaging ourselves, because in order to see someone else's humanity, we first have to see it in ourselves. And if you can't see it in someone else, then it's like a double-edged sword.
For sure. I almost think it goes the other way. If you can't see it in yourself, then you can't see it in others. But again, it could be I think sometimes it's the way.
It's cyclical. It goes both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, because of course I'm going to hate fat folks if my biggest fear is that I might be seen as fat. Right. And I could see that. What's so funny is me now on the other side of the receiving all of that, what I could see that in those people. And like, it makes me sad for them that their biggest fear is that they would be seen as fat.
They would be fat. Yeah.
Right. Like, how sad, and who did that to you? And I can almost answer who did it for you. It was probably a combination of your parents and society that made you feel like you would be worthless if you gained weight. And how sad is that? It's just so sad. But yeah, if we don't do that work for yourself, then you're going to be in that place of judging others for sure and ranking others. We were just going to talk about fun stuff. I don't think we're capable of it, Taina.
Well, we talked a little bit about fun stuff. There was Christmas in July in 50 states in 50 days and Airbnb.
True. But we bring the analysis when we do it.
Of course.
But I appreciate it because honestly, the conversation is what's helping me unpack some of this stuff about, oh, look at the ways this superiority stuff is showing up for me, and just trying to enjoy this silly little fun thing. Yeah. And it is kind of wild how, again, the reason I love it is because it's not political. And yet my experience with it shows that it is. So funny. Yeah. I have to hop off early today because I have a client call right after this, so we're leaving. But anything that you've been enjoying lately besides Christmas in July that you would want to share?
I know I've really been into fanfic lately.
I know, of course.
And I have actually really been enjoying other fanfic readers on social media. Like,
you find a community?
Yeah, there's like this community that are into the same things or into the same kind of fics and into the same tropes that I'm into. And so like we talk back and forth whenever we're reading something that the other has already read, and we're like, sharing feedback and the experience. And it's been really nice. It feels like making friends again, even though it's like, not in real life, quote unquote. And the only thing we ever talk about is fanfic, but it's been fun.
Harry Potter still?
Yeah, Audre Lorde, of course. Audre Lorde. So
do you think, I'm curious, like at some point, do you think you'll exhaust yourself on Harry Potter fanfic and move to some other genre of fanfic or move to a different part of Harry Potter fanfic? Or is this just like, it's this very
specific? Read a few dreary fics, which are Draco and Harry. And oh God, I did not expect it to be as hot as it was. But my 17-year-old little bestie was like, I hate the Hermione fanfic. Y'all have too many fics. like there are literally thousands upon thousands. Like,
so you could probably never finish them all anyway.
I
anyway.
could
They'll
never.
continue to have more
Yeah,
created.
like I download at least 5 or 10 new fics every week. And
And
I
but you
read
don't
like
feel a
maybe 2
call
a
to
week.
like explore other kinds of fan fiction
No,
or other no.
no,
Interesting.
no. There's too much. The Germani specifically, not even just the Harry Potter. Like the Germani has like tens of maybe
Do you
hundreds
think
of thousands.
is this like an ADD thing, this hyperfixation, or is it just that's just like there's just this one narrow? It's just amazing to me that you don't have like a call to try something to dabble in some other
Yeah. Yeah.
area.
I don't think it's an ADHD thing. I think it's the same 2 characters in different scenarios. So it feels like a choose your own adventure experience, but there's also this sense of familiarity. So it's like it's being able to like feel these things and explore these ideas, but in a way that's familiar and unambiguous. So it feels safe.
Interesting. I feel like I would be burned out by now, but I love that you're not. Like, I can't wait to see at what point you finally say, you know what? I'm
Done.
done. We'll see. I feel like at some point it's going to happen. So everyone listen, we'll
We'll
find
see
out.
when that happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to recommend a book, an audiobook specifically, which is called An Actress of a Certain Age. It just came out recently. It's by Jeff Hiller. He's the co-star on Somebody Somewhere, which was on HBO Max.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard it was really good.
Oh, he's fantastic on the show. I love him, love him, love him. And it's his story of, and it's called Actors of a Certain Age because it's the story of him kind of hitting it big really later in life. I think nearly 50 when he got this part on the show. And just, it's a really wonderful story about his life and about Hollywood. And he reads it and it's just such a great reading of it. And it's not super long and I just devoured it. I loved it so much. So totally recommend it. So, okay, that's it for this week.
See ya next week.
Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time. And if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast. But truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.